Hello and welcome to GK Book. Today is 1st February 2022. Here I am going to read the editorial of the Assam Tribune. Today's first editorial is Remaining Alert. Reportedly, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has lauded the Assam government for its efforts towards rhino conservation in the state in his Mann Ki Baat, commenting that while there had been 37 rhino deaths in 2013, 32 in 2014, the number of rhino killings dropped sharply to 2 in 2020 and 1 in 2021. The Prime Minister congratulated the people of Assam for showing the way towards animal conservation through collective efforts. He also opined that the burning of stockpile of more than 2,400 rhino horns seized from smugglers on World Rhino Day on September 22nd last year by the state government had sent a clear message to the smugglers. It is true that during the time of the Sarvanda Sonowal government, the authorities had implemented certain required steps demanded for decades by experts in the field of rhino conservation. One of these, for instance, was the creation of an elite rhino protection force, trained to deal with poachers and extremists. In 2018, the Assam government had raised a special rhino protection force, SRPF, for better protection of rhino in Assam. A step that no doubt resulted in the lesser killing of this beleaguered animal. Also, the Forest Administration has been involved in enhancing the participation of citizens, especially of youth belonging to the fringe villages of reserve forest areas, in conservation efforts, a step that has obtained sought results. However, just as a single swallow does not make summer, a year or two of listen posing does not mean that the threat to the Indian rhino is over, especially because many suggestions by conservation experts have yet to be implemented. The most notable of these had been effective propaganda at an international level against the use of the rhino horn by exposing the futility of such uses. As is by now well known, the Indian rhino horn is used in traditional Chinese medicines. The communist China has banned it on the mainland, continued uses in migrant Chinese pockets of South Asia result in continued demand and escalating prices. Experts are unanimous that as long as the demand remains, the species will always be in danger of being poached upon no matter what protective measures to safeguard it are taken. Thus, even as the authorities remain alert, a concerned effort has simultaneously to be made to lessen the demand amongst end users through effective propaganda. However, the end users live in places like Taiwan, Vietnam, and Philippines. Thus, any propaganda will have to be a multinational one with international conservation agencies, perhaps under the aegis of a body like the United Nations involved. Initiating such an easy would require the participation of the union government. Therefore, apart from patting the Assam government on the back, Modi can do his bit by prodding his environment ministry to initiate such an exercise. Here comes the second editorial, Myanmar coup. It is an irony that in several nations across the world, dictators are still calling the shots using the fear of the gun and other punitive steps. Overthrowing a duly elected government by staging a coup, the military top brass has assumed power in several countries. In some nations, the power keeps rotating between the democratically elected government and military. Myanmar figures in the list of nations where democracy has been abused by the military junta. Myanmar's military assumed power in a coup on February 1st last year. The military arrested the country's elected civilian leaders, including the state controller Aung San Suu Kyi and President Win Myint, in early morning raids. The military acted both as the compliant and the judge in Myanmar as it tried to justify its action first by complaining of fraud in the November 2020 general election and then overthrowing democracy campaign champion Aung San Suu Kyi's government. Suu Kyi's party had won the election and election morning groups found no evidence of mass fraud in the general elections. Like many other dictators, the Myanmar military usurped power by using a flimsy excuse. 1 year has rolled by, and the Myanmar military junta is no mood to hand over power to the democratically elected government and go back to the barracks. The military junta, headed by General Min Aung Heliang has carried out a brutal nationwide crackdown to suppress the widespread public opposition to its rule. The security forces have carried out mass killing, torture, arbitrary arrest, and other abuses against those who dare to raise their voice. The junta has detained over 11,000 activists, politicians, journalists, and others. Pro-democracy protesters were killed in several parts of the country. The nature of the security forces crackdown aptly makes it clear the junta's policy of suppressing opposition. It is believed that the security forces have killed nearly 1,500 people since the coup, including at least 100 children. The mass protests against the military junta indicate that this time the people of Myanmar are determined not to allow the power of the guns to rule over them. The brutal crackdown has failed to break the resolve of the pro-democracy protesters. Rather, they have prompted increased defense among the citizens. The strong resolve of the people has shaken the military junta instead of enjoying the fruits of power. Min Aung Hlaing and his generals are busy trying to quell the voice of the dissent to ensure the survival of their regime. The international community must show its resolve to support the pro-democracy voices of Myanmar and exert pressure on the military junta to stop their atrocities and hand over power to a democratically elected government at the earliest. Thank you, friends.